We need to fix the energy problem because we can't be globally competitive with the highest cost electricity going on in Sri Lanka.
So definitely we have to look at reforming the power sector and many other such sectors in order to attract investment and also provide more competition into the system. So more competition will attract more investment and that will drive down the prices.
Is there at least one battery bank installed closer to a transformer to capture the excess energy generated, and that can be dissipated in the night? If you have to embrace technology, we have to implement and show that it can be done.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another interview in our series Shared Values, partnering with Reshape Europe. And the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Sri Lanka office, is partnering with our media partner once again, EconomyNext and Echelon Magazine, to bring you this series where we will examine the shared values between Europe and Sri Lanka and how we can harness those shared values to create prosperity after this financial crisis that we are going through. I'm truly delighted actually to have three wonderful gentlemen, specialists in their field, to talk about a Green Deal for Sri Lanka. You must have heard about the Green Deal that has been discussed in the US. You have heard about the Green Deal being discussed in Europe. But if any country requires decarbonization and renewables and the kind of economic development that will keep our environment safe and also save us foreign exchange and bring us to the next level of development, that country is Sri Lanka. I'm delighted to be joined today by three experts, as I said. Sri Lanka's foremost sustainability expert, Dr. Ravi Fernando, who is the chairman and CEO of Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability. He serves on many boards in Sri Lanka and Europe as well, a lecturer, imparting his knowledge to many senior management in particular, but also to the general public as well. Joining Dr. Ravi is Damitha Kumarasinghe, who runs the most famous regulator in Sri Lanka at the moment, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Thank you for joining us. And Damitha is the professional there, the grown-up, who represents the think tank of the regulator in charge of many industries, not just electricity. Last but not least, I am truly delighted to welcome Champika Periyapperuma, who is the CTO of Regen Renewables Private Limited, a large player, particularly in the solar industry, and we are delighted to welcome all three of you. Welcome, gentlemen. We'll start off with you, Ravi. Look, we have many strategic priorities, are coming out of this financial crisis, and very little money to spend on them. Clearly, we need to have a different economic development model that is more sustainable and also that basically puts us on the same route that the rest of the world is going in, right? With such limited resources, what are the best areas to focus on, in terms of creating a Green Deal for Sri Lanka?
Great. Thanks, Imran, for having me on this session. I also am very happy that PUSCSL and a renewable energy company is with us here today, because I have had the greatest respect for these organizations which have been almost going against the grain in terms of going forward with renewables. As the topic is somewhat about reshaping Europe, and how does Sri Lanka reshape itself to be ready, to be Europe ready, I think that what has happened in the last couple of years, especially in terms of the European economy and also with the Ukraine crisis, has re-energized the European Union to refocus themselves to be much more embracing the Green Deal as it was presented. So in addition to the Green Deal, they have also now launched a project called European Gateway. And with these two opportunities for Sri Lanka, I think the key priorities for Sri Lanka, in my opinion, are, number one, how can Sri Lanka be an aggressive exporter of goods and services that Sri Lanka has? And we have some amazing stuff that we can export. But if we want to really champion the export businesses of Sri Lanka, we need to fix the energy problem.
Absolutely.
Because we can't be globally competitive with the highest cost electricity going on in Sri Lanka. So I would say one of the key priorities I would probably venture to every one of you is that we need to get our energy to a low cost, and we are not going to be low cost energy if we are in anything but renewables. And renewable energy in a nation which has 365 days of sunlight, and we leverage 1% of that, whereas countries which have half that amount of sunlight have 40-50% renewable energy. So I would say focusing and getting renewables going is crucial, and this then positions us well to be able to export to Europe, because the European Green Deal in the next 2 years will basically slash any company who doesn't have a sustainable manufacturing and sustainable sourcing, sustainable energy mandate. So this is where I see a major priority for Sri Lanka.
Right. Thanks, Ravi. And that's a cue to bring you in, Damitha. When we talk about renewables and the Green Deal, obviously one of the biggest carbonated industries, if I were to call it, is power generation. And if you look at the long-term generation plans of the CEB, which is a monopoly, you would see that it favors basically sources of energy derived from carbon and its variants. And I know our previous president made a commitment at the UN, and I think we've made commitments under the Paris Agreement as well to kind of go to 70% renewables for electricity generations by 2030, for example. But it doesn't seem to get reflected in our plans, and that is a problem. How do we move towards this more aggressively, and also looking at sources of funding? I think there's a lot of funding for renewable energy generation. How can we tap into that as well, particularly with CB effectively bankrupt?
Yeah, Imran. Actually, I would like to talk about two aspects. One is the planning aspects. Planning is basically multidisciplinary exercise, and which has many facets. So you need multidisciplinary teams to do proper planning of energy sector. Now this is a polarized planning system. So definitely we need to change the way that we plan energy in future very soon. And number two, the next question is, how do we attract investment? How do we get more and more renewable energy into the system is the second one. So for that, we need to create conducive markets in the country to get the investors in. You can't get investors in the present situation where they don't have a conducive environment to come and invest, and there's no proper financial viability in the existing system. So definitely we have to look at reforming the power sector and many other such sectors in order to attract investment and also provide more competition into the system. So more competition will attract more investment, and that will drive down the prices. And with that, since the renewables are more cheaper than all the fossil fuels at the moment, so it will provide a gateway for all the renewables to come in. So with this monopolistic structure, which is being hindered for a longer period now. So now it's the time for Sri Lanka to look forward and introduce more competitive environment for the electricity sector, so that these big players in the renewable energy and in all other players to come in and have a equal footing in the country, so that they can supply electricity at a much lesser price, and people will also have a choice, and people will also enjoy lower priced energy. So to conclude, we need multidisciplinary planning mechanism. We need to get all stakeholders into the system and into it, and also we need to have a proper markets to attract the required investments into the sector.
Yeah. Just to add something to what Ravi said, and to combine something that you all said. Now, he was talking about, exporting goods and services made from renewable energy. But renewable energy itself is an export. And I'll give you a good example of what's happening in Australia. Australia in the Northern Territories is setting up a massive solar plant, right? And through an underground cable, they're trying to export that electricity to Singapore, which is quite much further away than, say, India and Sri Lanka. And there could be massive investments in the north, in the east, any part of the country really, and then we can export. Is that feasible in terms of exporting things like electricity or other energy in addition to goods and services made from renewable?
No, actually electricity is a global product. Now if you look at India, Bangladesh, Nepal and Bhutan, all are interconnected.
Wow.
From there it is connected to Laos and Malaysia, that side. And from here you can connect to Tajikistan, from Pakistan to India, and we are outside.
And Afghanistan as well, yes.
So we need to connect to the Indian subcontinent so that we will have the access to other markets, not only India, but outside India also can be accessed through a connection to India. So renewable energy, we have plenty, will be a major export if we look at that in a proper way. And as I said, we need to tap the markets. We need to create competitive markets here to enter markets outside.
Outside, exactly. And then I think we need partnerships with big players in other countries, because then they do the connection between the two countries.
Exactly.
For example, a large Indian player would also have political heft in India. Other
thing, Imran, now what we need to understand is without markets here, we cannot tap markets outside.
Absolutely.
So if we are to export energies out, then we need definitely competitive markets here.
Absolutely. And I think that's where monopolies need to be broken down, and regulations in terms of generation, who can generate, for example, needs to happen. So I think we're moving in the right direction. The crisis is an opportunity. I'm going to come to you, Champika. Now, you are in the space, right? You are in the space of solar. And Ravi was saying we are an island with 365 days of sunshine. Yeah. And even if you tap 1% of that, you could be
we are actually
large.
tapping only 1%.
We are only tapping 1%. I thought it's a hypothetical example, but apparently that is how bad. And the funny thing is, I have just been overseas for a long time and been over the last year, and so many people tell me, ask me how we can have an energy crisis when you're so blessed with so much sunshine. So I have no answer to this question. But hopefully you can tell us, how do we get renewables in terms of, now one of the examples, one of the objections is that cannot form the base of our generation because it's not reliable, etc. Are these true? What is the mix that might work for us?
Yeah, thanks, Imran. So two things, put things in perspective. Like terms like base load, firm power, these are becoming obsolete all over the world, right? So it's more, distributed generation, smart grids. Those are the taglines which has been in, when we were even studying, they has been there. But we see a lot of other countries actively participating and, propagating those ideas into action. Yeah, we have been talking about this for a long time, but it's more talk than proper action, right? So to start off with what Damitha mentioned, so the regulator and the utility plays a major role in what we do, because we can only go and integrate to a live grid, right? Especially in solar rooftop and also in ground mount. So unless there is direction and intent from those two lines, there is a lot of gap between the deliverables and what we can do. When the solar industry started in 2011, there were a handful of companies. Now we had up to just before the COVID pandemic came, we had 380 companies registered with SLSCA.
Wow.
Even now we have 300 plus companies, but a lot of them are facing pressure of global economic crisis. But coming back to the energy mix, we have pledged 70% energy by renewables by 2030, which was originally 80%, but 70% is good enough.
Yes.
So where do we stand now? We are around 30-32%. So when we have better hydro resources where we can dispatch, then we would get a bit higher. So we have about 8 years more to achieve a long target. So in that, there are two things that can very quickly deploy: solar and wind.
Yeah.
A 25 megawatt wind plant can be put up in 1.5 years. 1 megawatt rooftop plant we do in 3.5 to 4 months. So out of that, a good 2.5 months is procurement, right? So once we have these things, and there are enough of players in Sri Lanka, actually some have gone abroad. So we have the expertise, the industry is mature. We have 10,000 plus people working, right? So, but at the same time, if we keep on restricting the development, sort of putting red tape in each and every step, we see the goal, but getting there is increasingly difficult task. So I would say, yes, we can do it. We have the potential, we have the people to do it, and we have the potential, as we discussed, to export. But to do that, first let's look at immediately what we need is energy. We are at an energy crisis, and especially energy security, which we are facing day in, day out. And we have been discussing this for the last couple of years, predicting that the fossil fuel powered units are going to come to this level. It has actually surpassed our predictions by a long margin. But at least now, if we sit down and come into a consensus, like, right, I am a consumer as well,
of course,
right? And there is no right platform for the consumer to come and tell what they think about, right? Maybe a public consultation from the regulator and maybe newspapers. But other than that, the consumer just sits and follows what is given to them. We see a tariff increase going to come up. So these are things that needs to be done. But yes, we have the potential. The numbers are huge, as Ravi said. Even if we tap 10% of what we have, we'll get there within within next to no time. So how to get there and pool the resources, and more than anything, the intent from the regulator, from the utility, and the people will help us get there, hopefully.
Imran, as a total outsider who has seen renewables spiral in Europe, I think some of the key lessons I'm seeing there, which we need to probably bring here, is number one, a policy framework,
of course,
which is enabling the renewable energy sector to boom in Sri Lanka. And like you have already mentioned, it's an absolute win for Sri Lanka. I mean, Tamil Nadu is next door.
Of course.
We should be probably, if you can, Singapore can be serviced by Australia. But enabling environment is number one. So policy framework. I think the second thing is, one of the things I've been a little skeptical about some of the people in the CB area is that they keep telling me that the technology is not developed. And that is absolutely fraudulent.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to be very clear, because there are two gentlemen here who are doing their best to do this, make this happen for Sri Lanka. And I can tell you today, the advancements in technology, from smart grids that Champika mentioned, to the more efficient solar panels, which are now, they're actually in perovskite solar panels, which are getting to the 30%, 40% efficiency levels, to the floating solar.
Right.
Sri Lanka is blessed with 30,000 water bodies. If we took 1,000 of those water bodies and put floating solar into them, I think Sri Lanka's energy crisis, Sri Lanka would be ready to export.
Wow.
So floating solar is available, and the battery. Today, no one talks about solar on its own. Whenever we talk about solar or wind now in the European sector, we talk solar plus battery, wind plus battery, because otherwise this old story about in the night there is no solar, in the night there are batteries, and the batteries can store all the energy you want for not one night, but many nights. So solar, the technology enablement is the second one. Policy framework, technology enablement. And I think the third one is strategic joint ventures.
Absolutely.
There's no way, I think, it'll be a great thing that, every one of these excellent companies who are fighting against the storm against them, yet doing great work in renewables. If these companies can now do some really smart joint ventures, and then you have European amazing companies in Europe. So I'll give you one company that am following very closely. It's a company called Ørsted. Ørsted, was the Danish oil and gas company 10 years ago. New CEO came in and said, I want to be in renewable energy because oil and gas is dying. Just imagine, the oil and gas company of Denmark. In 2009, he took over. By 2015, today, Ørsted is the number one renewable energy company in the European sector. It's already expanded to the world, and with a clear goal of being the world's number one green energy, wind power company in that. So a company like that, will be looking for companies in Sri Lanka. So in summary, policy framework is the starting point. Currently, we don't have a policy framework, and our leaders must see the value of this opportunity and set it up. Number two, new technology. We don't have to go to the old technology. We can leapfrog into the new technology. Lastly, strategic joint ventures with some of the top European companies. Ørsted is in Denmark.
Right. Actually, just to add to something that you said, Ravi, now in Australia, they were testing out solar panels that generate electricity in the night. Right, not as efficient as obviously daytime. So the excuses are not there. And also some of the biggest hydrocarbon players, right? The Ambanis in India who have refineries, and Twiggy Forest in Australia who has huge amount of coal. They are going into renewables in a large way, and they have. I can tell you that they have looked at Sri Lanka as an option. But obviously the enabling environment and also I think corruption is what has really repel them, to be honest. They've come here, they looked at it, they've been told that they needed to do this kind of thing to enter the market, and they don't want to do that because there are plenty of other locations to invest in. So I think that is something we need to look at. But maybe one thing that we can do in terms of getting these politicians on board is to talk about votes and to talk about jobs in this industry, because I think there's nothing else that a politician loves than to give jobs to people. Where are the jobs going to come in the green economy? Anybody?
Actually, I will enter that question in a different way. Now, if you really look at this issue we are facing right now, this is an affordability issue, right? We have to make it very clear, because the oil is purchased at 450-500 rupees a litre. That means more than 100 rupees a kilowatt hour from oil-based power plants, and coal is about more than 50-60 rupees. And we don't have enough power because we don't have purchasing capacity to purchase oil and coal. So this is a clear affordability issue, which is an energy security issue. Energy security issue is a national security issue. On the other side.
Absolutely.
Right? So we have to clearly understand this affordability issue needs to be addressed quickly. And the only way of addressing it quickly is to have low-cost renewable energy. Yes. The more you pump in fossil fuel at this point of time, you will be more moved into the unaffordable situation.
Absolutely. And just to interrupt you 1 second before you continue, and I will let you do. The Middle East and even Australia are not investing in any more new sources, even though the price is high, because they don't see a future in that. So the cost is going to be even more high. I'm sorry.
Even more. Now these are actually moving upwards, all these fossil fuels. So we need to quickly move into renewables and reduce the cost, number one. Number two, if you look at 10, 20, 30 years ahead, then I don't see any other solution. Number two, with the electricity supply, we also need to look at the transportation. So the EV is coming in big way in Europe and all other countries right now. So we have to look at transport also from the eyes of producing electricity. So electricity will provide a solution. So for that, we need to move into renewables quickly, number one. And when you look at the job creation, the most jobs are created in the renewable energy sector right now as well. So when you move into the renewable energy sector, there will be a lot of local jobs being created in Sri Lanka. But if you look at the fossil fuel, the jobs that are being created in Sri Lanka is very limited and minimum. So renewable energy will provide an issue for the social issue of job creation, as well as our affordability, energy security, national security issue of affordability.
In fact, the word we use in Europe is creating green collar jobs. And the fastest growing sector in terms of job creation now in the States, also in the energy markets, is the renewable sector. Because today from getting a power wall put up in your house to a solar panel in your house to getting like the sustainable transportation going. There is such a lot of opportunity. And I think this is a absolute win-win for the nation. We can deliver electricity at a lower cost, creating more jobs. Otherwise, we'll be putting up more hospitals because every terawatt of coal production kills about another 30, 40 people. So followed closely by petroleum and oil and gas. So once you come to the renewables, that figure drops to hardly anything. So we are basically killing people. And look what's happening in Europe today. They are going through the biggest heat wave in its entire history. Every country has been crossing 40 degrees centigrade. And every country has broken a new record for heat. Why? Because they are burning fossil fuels. And to Damitha's point, if you keep burning fossil fuels, you're going to increase the carbon dioxide, you're going to heat the country, and basically we will end up having the heat waves that everybody else is talking about. So one way to avoid that is to do what he's saying.
Champika, where do you see the green jobs being there, and how much of those jobs, people who do it here can also go and do it overseas and advance their lives as well?
I'll take a page of what Damitha said. Now, in our industry, it is more of a skill job because we are, especially in rooftops, people work at heights, at scorching sunlight, and we are working with DC mainly, and which is a very much skilled job. So PUCSL has actually answered our prayers some time back, and they are pioneering a set of programming courses with Vocational Training Institute with NVQ certification. Now that is very important. A lot of people are engaged in the industry, but they don't have a paper qualification.
Yes.
So the moment you get NVQ, and if we can produce enough and more of skilled labor, we are always talking about bringing in foreign currency. So this is a readily available market worldwide, because if you take our total solar penetration rooftop, we have done about 615 megawatts integrated so far for the last couple of years. But if you take a plant in Europe or Middle East, one standalone can be 1,000 megawatts, right? So imagine the number of people who needs to be working, and those countries definitely get labor from outside and skilled labor, right? And of course, as to mention what Ravi said, those people can always come back and champion with our teams and bring that technology, because we are looking at 20, 30 years ahead, not just up to 2030. So but I am really with Ravi that we need to embrace technology. The main resistance to renewables integration has been this mental barrier to cross that path and say, okay, we can do it. It's nothing new. Everybody else in the world, even countries like Bhutan and smaller economies have done
Costa Rica.
Exactly. So, and there are certain islands which are self-sufficient with renewables.
Hawaii.
So, Hawaii, yeah. So you can talk enough, and because these are all proven. So it is just that we, for some reason, it is not seen as the major player who is going to be taking the energy sector, because we don't have a power crisis. We always have energy crisis. And as Damitha said, we are talking about coal power plant and 3 stages, and they are talking about intermittency in solar. So if one stage of coal power plant breaks, it's 300 megawatts.
Exactly.
Right? So what about intermittency there?
And the sun doesn't stop shining.
Yeah, so these are all, things that we have to take a challenge. Engineers are there to solve problems, not to say we cannot do it. So in our industry, engineers are taking that challenge. And I'm sure with the correct path and the target set, and we are aggressively going towards them, there will be much more jobs created and enough of good vibes created. And these are all things that you can be happy about. You can tell your children, I am part of this.
Other thing, Imran, now it's not a question whether we need to do it or not.
Absolutely, no choice in the matter.
The problem is now we are facing an energy security issue, national security issue, and an affordability issue through affordability issue. So we have to address that
Absolutely.
immediately.
Absolutely.
So we can't keep on talking about whether we can do it or not. Somehow you have to do it. This I think everybody should understand.
Absolutely. And I just want to come to you, Champika, about something else you said before. I mean, one of the most hilarious things that we heard about in one of these COPE committee hearings is that people who work in the CEB are paid salary to read meters, but also paid allowance on top of that to read the meter right. And these are the sort of people in other parts of the world. Obviously, they moved into smart grids that can give you a total view of your energy. For an individual household, right? How you consume energy, what mix of it is consuming, depending on the time of day. You can switch between sources. What are the technological solutions? Now that the excuse has been this technology is behind. I think everybody here agrees now. Technology is actually ahead, way ahead. So what are the technological solutions we have in terms of that we can easily deploy now, using the crisis as an opportunity?
Yeah, I think the crisis has brought one very good catalyst to battery storage, because now nobody talks about solar these days. I get a lot of inquiries daily. They just want solutions with battery, and absolutely costly affair at the moment. But when we started rooftop, it was the same. There were a few people who were bold enough to say, okay, we want to go at whatever cost. Now, the people who are deploying with renewables with battery are people who said, okay, I don't mind. I just want to be off-grid. At the same time, utility would do well to support these people, right? And we can shift the peak hours, and you can bring that intermittency out of the equation. And one thing actually I'm very sad to see is that there is no R&D budget. I believe there is spent on renewables. Like there are talk about the transformers getting saturated because of higher solar penetration. So, but is there at least one battery bank installed closer to a transformer to capture the excess energy generated, and that can be dissipated in the night? But then the private sector, if they given a number that is plausible, we can bring a paper to the investor and say, this is your payback. We can do that. But I believe that should come from the ministry, that should come from the utility to do a pilot project. And one good thing about LECO, they are way ahead in this aspect. They did a project at Modular University, smart grid project, 700 kilowatt kVA generator, 500 kilowatt solar system with 400 kilowatt hour battery bank. And when there are not many lectures, that transformer is self-sufficient. They hardly use CB power. And whenever there is a power cut, they can operate it as a microgrid. And the generator has the capacity to synchronize with CB as well. So this is one good running example which can be replicated. Like solar, it is always modular. You can just reproduce the same model elsewhere. So these are things that, as you say, if you have to embrace technology, we have to implement and show that it can be done. It's been done all over the world. But I believe if given the opportunity to get a payback, the private sector will do it. But then the support from the relevant line agencies and authorities should be there. That directive should be there.
Okay. Damitha, I'm going to come to you, and I think I have a solution to why there is so much of apathy on this. I think that is because of the pricing signals we have given, right? At the cost of even making our utilities bankrupt. Not just CEB, but also CPC that supplies them this thing. We've not given the right price signals to the consumers. We have not told them how much, the real cost of going the options between renewables, carbon sourced, source of fuel, and also we haven't even actually added any environmental costs. Also, in other countries we have carbon tax as well. So how do you how now? I think we are arbitrarily trying to raise utility costs but I think it needs to be done in a way that is more thought out, because then you get consumer buy-in. So how do we send these right price signals that can make it affordable for investors into renewables, but also consumers understand the real cost of the way they consume energy?
Yeah, actually, when you look at the pricing, Imran, number one is you have to have the reasonable pricing.
Of course.
First. So you have to understand what is the reasonable pricing. The question arises is whether the present cost is reasonable. So then we have an issue in passing that to the consumers as it is. That's why I am saying that we need to have markets to discover the best prices. For example, I will take 1 minute on this. Now, we all remember the telecom industry in the 1990s.
Of course.
The situation was pricing was very high. Very difficult to get a call to US at that price. No? Okay. One is we got and the price. And number two, you had to wait 7-8 years to get a connection.
Yes, the excuse was you can't get those loops.
Exactly. So what was there? There was a scarcity and high price. Scarcity and high price. Then the technology changed from the landlines to mobiles to digital to analog to then to digital and so on and so forth. With that, Sri Lanka has created a market for that new technology to come in. Big players came in, billions of dollars pumped in, and today we have more phones than the people in this country, and we don't care about a telephone call's cost today.
And one of our data is some of the cheapest in the whole world.
In the world. So we have moved from scarcity and high prices to abundance and low prices with the change in the technology and creating a market for that technology to develop. Now in the electricity sector also, we are at a juncture where we have high prices and scarcity. Get it very clearly, scarcity and high scarcity. Yeah. So now we have to move to low prices and abundance. And the technology is ready. New technology is available. Solar is there, wind is there, battery technology is there, and so many new technologies are coming. So now what we have to do? You have to need to create a market for these technologies to take it over. Without creating the market, no point in talking anything. So now we are at a very critical time where we need to create the markets for these new technologies to grow and move from this scarcity to abundance, because solar is everywhere, wind is everywhere. It's abundant resource.
Absolutely.
So like the bandwidth, Yeah. So you have to expand this. So that is how you discover the prices. Now the current situation is that how do you price electricity at 120 rupees a kilowatt hour? Whether that is affordable to the people. Are we throwing half of the people out from electricity?
Absolutely. Even those who had connection before may not be able to continue at this rate.
No, exactly is that. Now if we try to price it at the marginal cost, which is more than 100 rupees a kilowatt hour, definitely going off grid with battery and solar is cheaper. So people will move there. So we have to understand this. That's why I'm saying to come out of this situation, the time is right. If it's already passed, but let's think about it. Think about what has happened to telecom. Create the markets, change the structures, create the market, create the competition, and get more and more investments and global players, as Ravi said, into this sector.
And we need that. Customers will
make the choices.
Decide.
Yeah. Give the choice to the customers.
Yeah. I think Sri Lanka really needs 2 or 3 things to make this amazing. I mean, what Damitha just said is a case study that is taught in business schools. How the telecom industry was, basically made available to everyone. And he's made a huge point. The same should be done with energy. So I think to achieve this in Sri Lanka, number one, you need a leader who totally understands what is happening in the global energy sector today. Because if we don't have someone who really gets it, that the world is all moving into renewables, and that Sri Lanka is lagging behind, And we have a commitment that is, with every year coming closer to 2030, and somebody is going to suddenly say, oh my God, we have 3 years now, we've got to go get 20% every year to get to 60%. And that is not going to happen. So I think we need a leader who is tech savvy and who knows what is happening with energy, number one. Number two, he or she must now drive the enabling policies through the entire system, and PUCSL is doing a fantastic job. We have so many companies in renewables now, wind power, there is Windforce. So now bring these guys together and make sure that this market is opened out. And the key point for me is encourage off-grid. Because to me, if the country is having a huge problem with the grid and we don't have whatever, then why aren't we encouraging off-grid? I mean, I went and got myself a battery because I'm teaching internationally, and now I have never had a power cut after that. So why? Because I realize my work internationally is going to be disrupted if I can't be telling the students who are all logged into my lectures, today we're having a power cut for the next 1 hour. No. So I said, okay, how do I solve this? Got a battery, and luckily I got the battery before the dollar went up. So now I'm zero power cuts. I'm off grid anytime I want, right? So I think leadership, understanding technology and what's happening in the world, policies that support the expansion of this thing, and even enabling joint ventures should be in the policy. Because whatever said and done, then our Sri Lankan companies who have amazing manpower will now use the capital these guys are bringing to do all these projects. And we should by now have 5 or 6 standalone battery unit stations in Sri Lanka already working for us. So I think these 3 things have to happen.
I think to get leaders, you need, an informed public that votes, in these people. A quick question to you, Ravi, is how do we, make these sustainable practices or renewables in terms of generation a normal thing that an ordinary person subscribes to? I think corporates do it, and I think you consult quite a few of those corporates. But in terms of ordinary people, how do we get them to buy in?
I think in terms of the ordinary man and person in Sri Lanka, if you look at the group that is probably in the lowest band in terms of electricity, I think we have to subsidize their costs, because they are the ones who are caught between they are basically struggling to survive. So I think we need to have a strategy where the bigger tariff payers are subsidizing that group. And we should be able to tell the ordinary person, you are going into healthier, cleaner energy, and this message has to go across everywhere. I don't think anyone has told you if you burn for 1 terawatt of coal power is going to kill 40 people. People should need to know that if you do that, every time you walk on any street in any road in Sri Lanka, you're breathing in all the hydrocarbons that are in diesel and petroleum, and you're basically, with every passing day, creating a potential cancer patient in the lungs. So I think the education part is important. But I want to just tell you one thing. In the companies that I sit on the board, the first thing I was telling Champika also, first thing I do is to tell them, I want to be 100% renewable energy driven for electricity in the next 4 years. Give me a plan to do this. And everybody this guy is mad, what is wrong with him? But I can tell you, I did that with Aitken's plantations. Today we are 158%. And I have told them, now go to 200%. LOLCB did that. And now I'm working on Dilma on the board, and I want to get them to also to think like this. So I think it all stems from leadership. You need a leader who's saying, we are going there, don't give me excuses. This good for us, good for the planet, good for everyone.
Excellent. Gentlemen, sadly, we are running out of time, and we are actually out of time. But I am more heartened than anything else in what is happening in this crisis to see that the knowledge required, the expertise required, a path forward is available. right? I think now as individuals, I think we need to push the envelope in terms of pushing our leaders to kind of, go in the direction that we need to make sure that Sri Lanka, survives environmentally as much as it survives economically and as a country as well. Thank you for your insight. The conversation continues online and also across social media as well. Thank you for being part of this interesting conversation, and I'm sure we're going to continue having more conversations going forward as well. Thank you, gentlemen.